Podcast Answer Man, episode number 262.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference. This is GSPN.TV. Join the community.
Hey, this is Rick, co-founder and CEO of Blog World New Media Expo, and you're listening to the Podcast Answer Man.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this, my friends, is the podcast about podcasting, helping you take your show to the next level. It doesn't matter if you are a brand new podcaster, if you have been podcasting for many years, or you haven't quite yet recorded that first episode. You really should check out learnhowtopodcast.com. Anyway, there's something we can all do to take our show to the next level. That's right, my friends. It is all about taking things to the next level. And today I am taking the amount of amazing value in content to the next level with this episode, because I am so excited about all the different things that I've planned ahead of time to record for you. In fact, one of the things that I'm doing today, it's actually the second week in a row that I've done it, but I will tell you about it today because it was quite successful last week, is I'm recording the Ustream live video recording of episode 262 of Podcast Answer Man. In fact, what I'm going to do is in the show notes of Podcast Answer Man episode 262 at podcastanswerman.com/262, I will embed the video recording at the bottom of the post, just in case you want to kind of look at it. Now, why would you want to look at the video of me recording an audio podcast? Well, I think it's because the value here will be that you get to see how I've been using this program called Workflowy to design my outlines for my podcast. And you literally will see me sharing my screen to show you exactly what outline was put together beforehand and how I use it to walk me through the show. So, for example, when people are watching the video, and actually people are watching me live right now, they'll see that I am ready to start off this show with the random plug of the week. And I can actually click on random plug of the week and see that I am going to be telling you about my good friend Steve Kloida, who is also a podcast mastermind member. And he has a podcast called The Prospecting Minute. Now, Steve Kloida has more than 30 years of experience in sales. And he actually used to be very big into the telemarketing world. And so what he does is he actually has perfected several formulas, several approaches, and techniques to help you work on your sales pitch or how to communicate to actually new prospects, sometimes cold calls, if you will, and how to take that and generate more sales. In fact, the description of his podcast says sales and prospecting strategies for the 21st century, which will attract more prospects, retain more clients, and drive more sales. And if that's something that you might be interested in, then you might want to listen to his podcast. In fact, if you do, and you listen to the intro text of his podcast, what he says when he's introducing the show, I think that you'll find out that Steve's been a little bit influenced by the Podcast Answer Man. You'll just have to go and click play on one of the episodes just to find out what I'm talking about. Anyway, Steve Kloida is doing one of the things that I typically. I love highlighting podcasts as a random plug of the week that do things in a way that I typically don't recommend for podcasting. I'm personally, myself, I'm not a fan of the 10-minute or less format for a podcast, but I think it's a perfect format for many people. And Steve Kloida seems to certainly feel most comfortable in that 5 to 6 minute episode range, or 5 to 6 minutes per episode range. He does a great job knocking it out of the park. If you want to find out more about his podcast, head on over to theprospectingexpert.com. Again, that is theprospectingexpert.com. And if you like Steve's show, make sure that you let him know that you heard about him from the Podcast Answer Man. Occasionally I like to bring in new segments into Podcast Answer Man. And this week, I want to introduce a new segment. It's not going to be a weekly thing, although it could happen quite often. It may happen very rarely. I don't know. It's whenever my heart says, wow, this is something I want to share. And this is, I'm going to call it the word of wisdom, a word of wisdom that I want to share with you. And it's better than saying the quote of the week, but it's somewhere I've been inspired in some way by some quote that somebody's given. And I think that it really applies to either my journey, or I've seen that it's really applied to the journey of other podcast mastermind members or my coaching and consulting clients, whether it be my podcasting A to Z students. Matter of fact, I forgot. I need to add that to my show notes here. I can't believe that I didn't even put that in here. Let me just put on here podcast mastermind and podcasting A to Z before my interview with Angelo Mandato today. Anyway, my word of wisdom for those of you who are watching the video, and this is why, by the way, this is one of the reasons why Podcast Answer Man, as far as I can see into the future, will not become a video podcast. Because what I'm doing right now is I'm about ready to refer. For those of you who are watching the video, you just saw me do something really cool, which is just to add something to the outline of this podcast as I was recording the podcast. And Workflowy does make it that awesome. And so I do encourage you to go watch the video. But you know what? This is the last time I'm going to do this, because what I just did frustrates me to no end. It does. I really despise listening to an audio podcast that was recorded as a video, and then all of a sudden, for those of you who are only getting the audio experience, you just missed out on something cool, which means that you're a second-class citizen. We're really doing this for the video audience because that's where I get the fullest potential to share everything with you. The only thing is here's the deal. The video quality, even the audio quality of my video is going to be subpar compared to the audio quality of the audio version of Podcast Answer Man. So, number one, audio is more relevant to where people want to listen, and they can do so many other things. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. You've heard me talk about it a billion times. I'm a huge fan of audio over video, but just in case you wanted to see what I was doing on Workflow, you could see that if you went and watched the video at podcastanswerman.com/262. And I'll stop being a hypocrite now and go back to my word of wisdom, which is from this week, from a blog post from Seth Godin. The word of wisdom and a quote that you could write down for yourself. You can even put this on your whiteboard if you have one like I do, and just write it down big and bold. Be judged or be ignored. You have an option. Seriously. Actually, this is a blog post from Seth Godin, and the actual title of the blog post was, "You will be judged or you will be ignored." And in fact, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to put a link, not only a link to the blog post in the show notes, but the blog post is so short, so sweet, so to the point that I'm going to read to you the entire blog post. It's like a couple sentences. Anyway, this is what he says. You will be judged or you will be ignored. There are, let's see here. He says, those are pretty much the only two choices. Being judged is uncomfortable. Snap judgments, prejudices, misinformation, all of these combined with not enough time, and then in parentheses he says, how could there ever be enough time to truly know you, means that you will inevitably be misjudged, underestimated, or overestimated, and unfairly rejected. The alternative, of course, is much safer: to be ignored. Up to you. I love these little tiny posts by Seth Godin, and the more I think about it, maybe I might add Seth Godin's blog post to my list of RSS readers. They're so short and to the point most of the time that I really love the content that and the line of thinking that Seth Godin has. But I want to talk about this word of wisdom. Are you so afraid of being judged that it's kept you from launching your first podcast or your first blog, for that matter? And I know that is the problem for many people. They're afraid of being judged. I want to tell you that after more than 3,000 podcast episodes, I still struggle with this today. You heard if you go back and listen to the last 5 minutes of Podcast Answer Man, episode number 261. That's at podcastanswerman.com/261. If you go back and listen to that episode, the last 5 minutes, you will hear me question the value or the level of quality of what I brought to the table. I had a fear that I would be judged, that this is a less than valuable episode. I oftentimes find myself adjusting the way that I approach this podcast based upon what other people have said in their feedback to me. Oftentimes very valuable feedback. I was having this conversation the other day about with one of my clients. His name is, I think it was Scott Ginn from betterbasketball.com. Anyway, Scott and I were talking about this idea of being authentic and transparent in your show, and I was talking about the fact that, in that episode, I got a lot of people who left comments, and which, by the way, can I just say, I love getting comments from you in the comment section on an episode of Podcast Answer Man. I absolutely am thrilled to receive your comments, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for those of you who take the time to go to the Podcast Answer Man episode at podcastanswerman.com and leave me a comment. I just absolutely love it. Just want to say that. But anyway, in the comments for 261, I got so many people who says, Cliff, I don't know what you're talking about. This was amazing. It's one of the best episodes yet. And I sometimes, where it comes to it is the amount of preparation, and I've actually been sometimes I've been putting as much as 1 to 3 hours worth of preparation work into an average episode of Podcast Answer Man these days. And I've been doing that because I wanted to actually take a more polished and professional approach. And this goes all the way back to some feedback I got. I believe it was from Walter a long time ago. And Walter's a good friend. He's a part of the Podcast Answer Man GSPN.TV community. And I have developed somewhat of a relationship with him over the course of the past year, and very much value that friendship. But at the same time, I will tell you that I do believe that I have changed away from a little part of the me that makes me in my podcasting. In fact, after the week after I got some feedback about my sometimes unprofessional or unpolished approach, I did an episode titled "The Unpolished Approach to Podcasting," and I defended it fiercely, that this is who I am. I will be who I am. And I will tell you that I took in that feedback, and I started thinking, it's like, wait a second. You know what? I am worried about how I come across. I do want to reach some of the people who are a little bit more professional. I don't want to turn people off. I don't want to be judged unfairly. I don't want people to come and make a snap judgment, to come and basically be misinformed about who I am. And I really wish people would get a little bit more time to know who I am and what I'm about and what my true message is. And that if they did, they wouldn't underestimate me or overestimate who I am. And they would accept me. And that's what I really want. And I want, I want birds and to whistle on your shoulder, Mr. Bluebird singing, and all that stuff. And gosh, I just showed how old I am. Anyway, I want it to be fun and actual and everything to be satisfactual. Zippity doo-dah. Come on, seriously. And I want it to just be me. And sometimes I'm so afraid of being judged that I change who I am. I change my approach. And what I've been getting as feedback a lot lately is that, you know what, Cliff, I love your podcast, and I don't even podcast. I love Podcast Answer Man, and I don't even podcast. I even saw that in some of the ratings and reviews. And people like Michael Hyatt say, I listen to your podcast, and it's not just for the technical stuff. I'm just inspired. And some other people have said that same thing. I'm just inspired by the way you communicate, the things you share. And I really wish I could tap in. I wish I knew what that was. I could put it into a formula so I can package it and share it with people. And I don't even know what it is, but it's somehow some people are just saying it's just the way you share who you are inspires me, and it inspires me to do things. And to be honest with you, I sometimes am afraid to just be myself because I'm afraid of being judged. And you know what? I want to continue to be authentic. I want to be authentically me, and I want to be transparent. And you know what? I am at the place now in my life where I have determined, go ahead and judge me. I'm too busy doing great work to be concerned about your judgment. But at the same time, I really do want to hear what you think, because if there's something massively wrong, I do want to adjust. I want to course correct, but I still want to be true to myself. And so I find myself at a tension between, the unpolished approach that's authentically me, but also saying, you know what, let's get to the point. Let's bring some value here. Let's not waste people's time. All right, let's get serious about this. And so anyway, the word of wisdom today, you know what? You have a choice. Be judged or be ignored. It's up to you. Thank you, Seth Godin, for that word of wisdom. All right. Next up, I wanted to bring to you a story that I saw. Somebody forwarded this to me, and I apologize for not giving a plug to the person who sent this to me, but they know who they are. They sent me this article, a link to this article on GigaOM, and I've never read the GigaOM website before in my life, but I did, however, check out this article because the title of the article was, let me see if I can find it here. Player FM makes podcasting look cool again, or makes podcasts look cool again. That's the title of this article. In fact, the very first thing that this article says, the very first words from the person writing this article says, podcasts may have fallen a bit out of fashion lately, but the new cloud-based podcast playback and discovery platform Player FM hopes that you'll give the medium another chance. You know what I have to say in regards to that? Right here.
Player Please, fresh us. Player Please, don't leave the house without a G. Player Please, think you can flex with me? Player Please, man, you can't get next to me. Player Please.
How about that for an unpolished, unprofessional approach that is authentically me? Player Please, come on. Podcasting has fallen out of fashion lately. Where are you coming from? We need a service like Player.fm to give podcasting another chance. Oh, come on. Player Please. That's what I got to say about that article. Anyway, I did check out the service. Let me give you the pitch. It was launched by former Google employee, I guess, Michael Mehemoff. Anyway, just a few days ago, and Player FM allows users to aggregate their personal podcast subscriptions online and play them on any computer or mobile device right from the browser. No additional software required. Now, I did check out the service, and I'm going to, number one, say, hey, okay, granted, this thing was launched just a couple days ago, but as far as fashion, the site doesn't look great. It's not wonderfully laid out. It seems to be reinventing the wheel when it comes to having to go and submit your podcast to another service. I couldn't find any way to search for content, like to search for any of the podcasts I already know and love based by text search. And certainly any of the channels, the featured channels that are there, or categories of podcast, if you will, seem to be quite limited as to what's there. It seems to be a very primitive submission to adding your new content via a Google Doc is what you're putting your information into. I I did find after playing around for a very long time that I was able to add my own shows, RSS feeds, to my own personal channel after having signed up. I did choose not to sign up using a Facebook or a Twitter login because I didn't want it to automatically publish stories onto my timelines without me really getting into that. I didn't know how much control I have over that, but I created a traditional username, password, email account setup. And once I did that, I did see that I was able to add my own RSS feeds to my own channel. So I could actually, if I knew the RSS feed, I could add the podcast that I wanted to my own setup or my own profile there, which of course then does allow me from my browser to look at the things that I quote unquote have subscribed to and click play. And for a cloud-based player, and if you want to go through and curate all your stuff into that one channel, web-based, it's something you can listen to on your iPhone, iPad, whatever device that you have out there, mobile device, and all of that from your browser. Now, the thing is, I didn't check it on the mobile stuff. I'm just assuming that it works based upon the fact that I believe it's probably all HTML5, and one of the big key ingredients or the pitch of this site is that it works on mobile devices, but it certainly worked right from the browser. I've got a decent player. Browser experience is not too bad. Although my opinion is that even though I added my stuff several days ago to my own channel, it still didn't filter in any of my podcast that I submitted to my own channel. While I did see that if I give a link to it to somebody else, like I went and opened it in an incognito Chrome browser to see if other people could see it, not just myself, if they weren't logged in. My content now, because I put it in my channel, is on their service, but it still didn't flow into any of the featured channels where those might go in. It seems to me that there's a little bit of a manual process where they're probably going through all the submissions and putting them in the right categories and maybe choosing to feature some versus not the other. But I guess if the idea is this is a place where you can come and curate your own feeds and put all this stuff in, maybe there might even be an OPML or something like that where you can just import your all of your subscriptions at once. But here's the thing. My opinion right now is that this is still way new. It's way too new to matter to me right now. And it kind of reminds me of the old days of odeo.com. That's odeo.com, which is, I just looked at their site. I guess they're going to launch something different under that brand moving forward. But Odeo, I think, are the guys who created Odeo, actually decided to dump Odeo and move on and create this thing. I don't know. It's called Twitter. Anyway, it does. If any of you remember the old days of Odeo, that's what it reminds me of. And I don't know. Perhaps it fills a need for some people. If you're looking for a web-based solution to subscribe to all of your podcasts that will work on all different browsers, even mobile devices, go check it out, player.fm. And here's the thing. I want to point out that my displeasure for the way that this was pitched in this article goes to the author over at GigaOM and not with player.fm. Unfortunately, player.fm and former Google employee Michael Mehemoff, I'm sorry, but you got a bad rap just by the way that it was approached. Can player.fm make podcasts look cool again? Come on. Really? Seriously? Ugh. Anyway, moving on. Okay, next, I want to tell you about a free graphic that will look wonderful on your website if you're interested in it. It is a subscribe with iTunes graphic that you could put, excuse me, over on the sidebar of your website. And this is a free template that has been provided by my good friend Dan Andrews over at Lifestyle Business Podcast. He created this for his Lifestyle Business Podcast website. And he says, hey, if you like this, this is a way for me to give back to the podcasting community. I'll give you this, the PDF document or the PSD document or the Photoshop document that allows anybody who wants to go into the layers and replace the two places where it's got his image and you can update it and customize it. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to try to describe all of this to you in audio form, and I'm not even going to put it up for those, I'm not even going to show it on the screen for those who are watching by video. I'm just going to say, hey, go to podcastanswerman.com/262. You'll actually see my version of this file, not in the sidebar right now because my sidebar is a little bit congested at the time being. But inside the podcast episode where I'm asking people to rate and review my podcast in iTunes, you'll see my version of the graphic there. And just look for in the show notes at podcastanswerman.com/262 where you can grab the PSD file and edit it to your heart's content. And again, thank you to Dan Andrews for making that available to us. All right, moving along, we are next going to talk about how to manage multiple brands. And you know what? Goodness gracious, I put this off last week, and I'm going to put it off again this week. We're already with the interview with Angelo Mandato. We're already going to be over 1 hour. So, Spencer, I apologize. I'm doing it to you again this week. But I do want to share 3 other things that I think are very important for me to share with you. One, podcast artwork. Just a reminder, the upgraded version now that iTunes is looking for is 1400 by 1400 graphic artwork. Again, I want to recommend my good friend Jenny Hampson. She has been a member of the GSPN.TV and Podcast Answer Man community for many years now. She does all of my artwork for my podcasts, and she is the best. And for $175, she will create custom artwork that will blow your mind. In fact, if you want to see some of her artwork and find a way to contact her, go to podcastanswerman.com/Jenny H. That's JENNYH. Podcastanswerman.com/Jenny H. And she can set that up for you. In fact, she'll even create the artwork for you at 2800 by 2800 and probably give you 1400 by 1400 versions and even smaller versions if you request it ahead of time. So Jenny H is the place to go for your podcast artwork. I used to actually do the artwork, charge my clients for the artwork and then go through Jenny H to get them made. Now I just refer people right on to them. And she does pay me a small little commission if you actually go through her. So it does not only does it benefit her, but it benefits me as well. Also, want to remind you that the Podcast Mastermind is accepting new members. If you haven't done so already, go over to podcastmastermind.com. There are way too many benefits for me to mention to you here. And in fact, if you are questioning about have any question as to the value of the Podcast Mastermind, at podcastmastermind.com, it literally right now forwards you just to a blog, actually a post on my site. And at the bottom, I encourage you to read the testimonials that are there from existing Podcast Mastermind members. Go check it out, podcastmastermind.com. If you've been thinking about taking your personal and professional life to a whole new level that you never dreamed possible before, now is the time. Are you ready for the Podcast Mastermind? Head over to podcastmastermind.com and find out more information. And then the long-awaited, that's right, my friends, it is finally time. And let me click this right here, right now. This, my friends, is the very first place I am announcing that the July Podcasting A to Z course is about ready to officially kick off its launch as far as getting people signed up. In fact, this coming week, right following Memorial Day, as soon as I get back, I am going to be reaching out to all the people who are currently on the waiting list. They will get first dibs at the 20 to 30 spots that will be available for students to enroll in the July Podcasting A to Z course. If you don't know about the Podcasting A to Z course, go to podcastingatoz.com. It is by far the single best value outside of the Podcast Mastermind. Although the Podcast Mastermind is not coaching and not consulting, Podcast Mastermind is something completely different. Go to podcastmastermind.com to learn more about that. But when it comes to coaching and consulting and the technical side of getting you up and running with your audio podcast and having you set up with the foundation that's going to get you to knock it out of the park. And it's not even just the foundation. This is A to Z. This is from beginning to end within 4 weeks. The most intense, amazing course that is going to walk you through side by side with you through the process, podcastingatoz.com. Check it out. If you want to be on the list of people who are in that course, email me, Cliff at podcastanswerman.com. And by the way, Podcasting A to Z, as soon as the sold out signs are removed and the buy now or click now or add to cart buttons or whatever buttons are added at Podcasting A to Z, then you can sign up. But if you want to get ahead of those people and make sure that you get in, email me, Cliff at podcastanswerman.com. Put Podcasting A to Z in the subject line. I'll get you in there. And now, my friends, it is time for my interview with Angelo Mandato of the Blueberry, the creator, founder, developer of the Blueberry PowerPress plugin. And I'm going to play that interview for you right now. All right, my friends, I am delighted to have on the Podcast Answer Man this time around Angelo Mandato. Angelo has been a good friend of mine ever since I first met him at PodCamp Ohio 1. Angelo, thanks for coming on to the Podcast Answer Man.
Thanks, Cliff. And actually, we go even before the first PodCamp.
That's right. You came down to New Media Cincinnati a couple times.
Right, yeah, because both you and Daniel Lewis and also Daniel Johnson Jr.
Yeah.
I think he was the one that actually ran those meetups. It really helped me out a lot with the first PodCamp.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was an awesome experience, and I wonder. I know that PodCamp Cincinnati's gone over really well down here last year, and I know there's another one being planned. Is there going to be another one in Columbus anytime in the near future?
Unfortunately, I don't have a schedule anymore that gives me time to do that kind of stuff. Well,
it's definitely a lot of work, and I just want to say I appreciate your support in the podcasting community, not only through PodCamps, but I think probably what is most interesting to the Podcast Answer Man audience is your work that many people, unfortunately, may not know about. I mean, they know about your work, but they may not know that you're the person behind it, and that, of course, is the PowerPress plugin for podcasting. Tell me real quick, how did you get involved in creating a PowerPress plugin?
Well, we were all using PodPress. I think PodPress came out 2006. So at that point, everybody was kind of doing their own thing with their own feeds. So as soon as PodPress matured a little bit, everybody kind of stuck to it real quick. But then 2007, that summer, and it's hard to imagine it's already been 4 years or over 4 years, but that summer, the PodPress plugin kept breaking every time they put out a new release of WordPress. And back then, there was like a new version of WordPress every 3 months.
Yeah.
And when WordPress 2.5 came out, it broke big time. And no one had a solution for about 2 weeks. And we were getting, at the Blueberry community, we were getting a lot of podcasters saying, hey, you know what, I'm in these ad deals, but my site's broken, and I'm really frustrated. And a couple people even said they were just going to quit podcasting altogether because it's not worth the hassle to, with a unreliable plugin.
Yeah.
So I brought up to the team a few months before that because PodPress didn't update since Christmas, that maybe we should help them develop it. So I reached out to Dan, the author of PodPress at the time, and he didn't really get back to me. In the past, he always got back to us, but he never got back to me, so I didn't know what was happening. So when June came about, or July, when WordPress 2.5 came out, we were in that conundrum, and Todd was like, "All right, fine. I know you wanted to do some changes to PodPress. Do it." So I started working on it. I spent about a week and a half with PodPress, and then I said, "This is really." It was kind of like trying to fix a dinosaur, and I decided at that point to just do a rewrite.
It was basically trying to write a brand new modern day operating system, but trying to be backwards compatible all the way back to Windows 3.1.
Right. And actually, PodPress was designed for like WordPress 1.2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was exactly that.
Well, I just want to say for the record, I was one of those people who never jumped onto the PodPress bandwagon. And I'm sure it will come up here later on in the story, but it took me forever. It took forever for Angelo to convince me to even try PowerPress. Because here's the deal. I was one of those people who always, from the very beginning, I was either blogger going through FeedBurner to iTunes and my audience, or I was always WordPress to FeedBurner to my audience. I've always, from the beginning, never failed to use FeedBurner, and it's never failed me since December of 2005. And so I never needed to use a plugin like PowerPress or PodPress or any of those things in the past. I was just because the thing is I was hearing everybody complaining, this is breaking every time it would upgrade. But I found a plugin that just did media enclosures, made that super simple. It was KG Enclosure Flex was the name of the one I used all the time. And then I just found the 1 pixel out audio player, because I found it absolutely mission critical that there must be an audio player on every post that is a podcast episode at the top. That was just, it's like, how can you do that? So I found those 2 plugins, and they worked, and they never failed me. So I never got caught into that. But as a podcast consultant, let's just say that when WordPress upgraded and that was broken for several weeks, it basically gave a gigantic boost to my business, but was not the kind of boost that I wanted, because everybody felt stuck and nobody wanted to pay. At least most of them didn't, because they were all doing it as a hobby. And it was very frustrating. And I determined at that time, and this is where I got a really bad taste for these all-inclusive plugins, podcast plugins. It's like, listen, this is why you should never rely on one of these plugins. This is horrible. These things are built to circumvent the system instead of working with it. It adds tables to your thing, and it just doesn't do it right. And so I always, for years, I advised, do not install any podcasting plugin. Instead, install this and this. However, there came a time when, guess what? KG Enclosure Flex did not keep up with the grade. And the good news is, because it was just one element, all that meant is that future episodes weren't getting enclosed with the date and timestamps. But all of my previous ones, because the plugin, all it did was create the enclosure for me, rather than me manually doing it myself. It never messed up any of the back stuff. So I knew that if that quit working, I could just uninstall it and I could still do manual enclosures. And that's what I loved, is that it didn't actually require special tables or anything like that. It was working with that. And it was probably not until version 2 of PowerPress when I learned that that's how you were doing this as well. So I'm sorry to break in, but I just wanted to give that little back history as well. But so basically it was June or July, and you started playing with it, and then you realized that, we're going to build this from the ground up. Go ahead and take it from there. Right.
Well, actually, to lead in what you were just talking about, I remember having discussions with you when we first started working on PowerPress back then, and your concern was with the data. When that combined with the other plugin we saw that was available but was very rudimentary was a podcasting plugin just called Podcasting, and it was very crude. But what that developer was, which I believe his name was Robert Heft, he saved the podcast episode data the same way WordPress saved it.
Right.
And after having conversations with you and a couple other folks, I'm like, you know what? We'll just do the same thing in PowerPress. So that way, if the plugin does get disabled, the data is still there. WordPress is still serving it like it would anyway. It's just that you don't have that extra iTunes-specific stuff there.
Exactly. And because you did that, that's what I mean, you actually followed through and said, you know what, Cliff, we took your stuff. Now will you recommend this? Now would you be willing to use it? And I still fought you for a long time. Because I'm hard-headed. It's like, listen, what I'm doing is working. You know, why should I change if it's working? But when all of a sudden KG Enclosure Flex was not getting those timestamps for the file, basically measuring the size of the file and then determining, you know, how long the episode is. In iTunes, it wasn't listening the episode length anymore. I'm like, okay, I don't want to manually do this. Let me try PowerPress. Right. And so I did. I installed it, and even to this day, personally, I am using PowerPress for 2 things and 2 things only. And I mean, literally, I'm a purist. You only do PowerPress is only doing 2 things. It's doing my media enclosure, and it's doing my audio player. That's it. That's all I use it for. But it does it brilliantly, and it's doing exactly what you had said that you guys would do, which is write the enclosures the way anything else would normally be done. But you guys actually went far beyond that, and you want to tell us a little bit about some of the other things that you decided to throw in there while you were building this thing.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, essentially we told folks, tell us what kind of features you want. And the most frustrating, though, for us initially was putting we wanted just one player that worked in all cases. And at the time, the player was Flow Player Classic. It's not the prettiest player. It's not the, it's not the fanciest full featured, but it was very reliable. It worked anywhere there was Flash, essentially. But, you know, one of those things where we just kept getting feedback. People wanted the 1 pixel out, or they wanted this player, they wanted that player. So finally we're like, well, you know, what's stopping us from just putting 5 players in the plugin? So we did. But I always have a development philosophy is that it needs to only be there if you set it to be there, and if it's not there, then it's not even loading. So, you know, rest assured that if you don't configure any players in PowerPress, none of that code is ever going to load into memory. It's just kind of like extra files in the folder that never get touched at that point.
Right. And I absolutely love the fact that you put the 1 pixel out player in there, because I do love the fact that you can customize the left side and the right side and the hover colors and stuff like that. You can actually, one of the things that you did that made it super nice is that you could actually put the name of the podcast and the text in the middle and kind of hard code that. That's really nice. So I enjoy the fact that you added that feature. One of the things that you guys built in, and I don't know when this came in, but you guys started to add this new feature, which is podcasting categories, or what's the official name that you give that?
Well, we have 2 solutions there. One is called the podcast categories, which means you can take a WordPress category and extend it for podcasting, and it just makes the podcast feed exactly like a podcast-only feed. And then the other thing we have is called podcast channels, and it's hard to explain the difference. But essentially, a category would be best for a solution where you're only creating MP3s, but you want to organize one series of episodes with one particular title and another series with another title. Whereas the channels feature is so if you're creating the same show, but you're going to create one that's in MP3 format, one in OGG format, one in MP4 video, then you can then create multi-channels that when you're editing your post, you put all 3 of those episodes in at the same time as you enter in the one set of show notes, but you have 3 separate podcast feeds.
Nice. So in essence, when you're creating, because at this point, prior to this channel system, if somebody came to me and says, Cliff, I want to create a video version of my podcast, but I also want to make the audio available as well. I think it would be excellent in both formats. So I want to do that. What I would actually have to have them do, well, there would be a couple different options. One option, the easiest option, would be to go to WordPress, create a category for the video episodes, create a category for the podcast or for the audio episodes, and then actually post 2 posts, one in each category, and enclose the audio file in one and enclose the video file in the other. And the only problem with that is people who are subscribed to the overall feed or to the site or whatever the case may be, you're putting in all this extra content for the actual blog post. And what if somebody, wants to come and they want to comment on the blog post and you want to keep all your community together? You got some people who are commenting on the video actual WordPress post, and some are commenting on the audio WordPress post, and they're not actually seeing that conversation converge.
Right. And the worst yet is search engine optimization.
Yes.
If you put the same show notes on both posts, you will get penalized by Google.
Yeah. So basically, there's that issue. There's that option. There was that option. There is another option, and one is to actually have, let's just say, run one of your feeds off of WordPress in your show notes, and then actually either hard code manually and do a separate feed that you would actually do as an XML file. Or you could use like Podcast Maker or some of the other RSS tools that are out there to kind of manually build, or using a WYSIWYG editor to kind of build a separate feed just for the video, and you can kind of just make that little subscription link available on the site as well, but it still points people back to the audio post or vice versa. Again, a lot of work, but you're telling me, and this is something I've never personally tried in PowerPress. But I have seen it in action on some other people. So basically, I create one category for the podcast, and I just create that one post, and I can embed, let's just say, the large HD version of the video, the small mobile-friendly video, and then the audio file. And I can enclose all three of those media files on one post, and it will still have it will go out to 3 separate RSS feeds. Exactly.
Yeah. The only tip, though, would be I would only do either category podcasting or podcast channel podcasting. I wouldn't combine the two, just because it really confuses things. It becomes a matrix of options at that point.
Right. So when you turn on the podcast channel, so let's just say, does it pick it up by actually, when you have the channels option turned on, you wouldn't just go and grab the feed for that category for that where that post is put in? Because this I actually tried. I wasn't going to say this, but I did. I tried this when I created the Blog World podcast for the podcast report. I actually did install PowerPress there, and I decided I'm going to try this channel thing. And I tried it, and what happened was, I, not knowing what I'm doing, and I've never asked you, and of course I'm not the type that reads a lot of documentation either. So what happened was, I just created the category, and I turned on this channel podcasting, and I went and got such and such blogworld.com/category/ the podcast report /feed, and it wasn't putting in the information in there. Is that because I was doing it wrong because I had channels turned on?
No. Well, yeah, you're trying to use a category feed at that point,
right? And there wasn't anything enclosed in there because I was using the channel. Is that why?
Right. So, channel has its own feed. Each channel has its own feed, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So basically, when you install PowerPress, we give you a podcast channel automatically, and we just label it podcast. So when you create an additional one, and that feed URL is yoursite.com/feed/podcast. Mm-hmm. So when you create additional podcast feeds, you're creating let's say for a PDF stream or PDF feed, it would be your domain.com/feed/PDF.
Ah. Gotcha. So it's different. So it's a different, basically, URL scheme than what I was used to seeing. And so that's probably why it didn't work. The only reason I didn't investigate it further is because when I was setting up the Blog World, they had some FeedBurner RSS feed redirection issues that they had been working on with an engineer.
Right.
That basically they had it set up to where anytime you pulled up any feed anywhere on Blog World's WordPress site, it always forwarded you to one blog RSS feed with FeedBurner. And so it literally took me about a week and a half of working with their engineers to get that turned off, to where I finally was able to do it. And then when I set it up under a channel, it's like, it didn't work. But then I actually went back and switched it back over to category podcasting, and then the category enclosure was there. So it worked. So I that's why I didn't investigate it further. But I'm sure it works more flawlessly. If I guess there's some documentation. Where do people go to get some support? I know I've seen some forums on, I guess, the Blueberry forums. That's where it's at?
Right. So if you have questions, you can go to the Blueberry forums, which is forum.blueberry.com. And then also when we launched version 3.0 of PowerPress, we launched a podcast specifically for it. So if you want to, right, and it's all video. So if you wanted to see video tutorials of different things using PowerPress, just check out the PowerPressPodcast.com.
Wow, I did not even know that. See, this is why I need to have you on more often to keep up with you guys. So PowerPressPlugin.com. And is it a video podcast, I guess, a screencast kind of podcast?
Yep.
Sweet.
Mostly our CEO, Todd, does the video, but I have a list of videos I'm supposed to do. I'm just not, I don't like being on the camera.
Now, I just typed it in, PowerPressPlugin.com.
PowerPressPodcast.com.
PowerPressPodcast.com.
Right.
And there it is. And there we go. Yeah, I do see it here. And very cool. I will link this as a resource in the show notes for this podcast episode. So I'll make sure that people have access to that. And I'm certainly going to go through it myself just to keep up to date with what you guys got going on there. So you have a new version of PowerPress that just came out.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, in March, Apple started putting out new specifications for podcasting, which is exciting because we're always wondering what Apple's going to do next with podcasting. A couple years ago when Steve Jobs mentioned that he didn't want amateur hour on his phones, it kind of got us a little nervous because podcasting is kind of synonymous with being amateur.
For some people.
Right. So obviously that's not what he meant. I think he meant that he meant something else with, it's not going to become amateur hour with people who don't spend the time. And I think that's the difference when you create a podcast. It does require an effort and time. So, so when they put out these new updates, we're like, sweet, this is like, since the iPad, they haven't changed anything. So this is this is good news that, Apple's on top and they want to do more stuff with what they're doing with video in particular.
Right.
So a lot of the changes are for the upcoming, which they won't admit, Apple TVs.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of the new specifications require the image to be 1400 by 1400, which there's a story behind that.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick because episode 261 of Podcast Answer Man, or no, not 261, but in episode 256, that's because this is episode 261. Anyway, but back in episode 256 of Podcast Answer Man, I went out of my way to say, guys, if you haven't seen this, if you go to the iTunes spec page, it has changed. There was no big announcement or anything, but if you look, it's changed, and they are now suggesting 1200 by 1200 artwork. And I went out and ordered all new artwork from my professional graphics people, and so did about 1,000 or more of my audience for Podcast Answer Man went out and got 1200 by 1200 artwork. But then all of a sudden, Tom Ballard put in one of the forums that I'm a part of. It says, does anyone know what the deal is with PowerPress and the latest update? I have my new 1200 by 1200 artwork ready to fly, but now PowerPress is wanting 1400 by 1400, and he's saying it won't even accept 1200 by 1200. So What happened there?
Well, we work with Apple on occasion, and we contacted Apple, let them know that we're implementing all these new features that they sent out, and they said, "Oh, hey, we're going to change that 1200 to 1400 by 1400."
Nice, thank you, Apple.
So you might want to change it in your plugin. So I kid you not, the day after we got the email from them, I looked to the specs, and they updated their spec page too. So,
but you can confirm the spec page did say 1200 by 1200 for like like 2 weeks or so,
all the way up till a week ago.
Yeah. And so first and foremost, I obviously there's nothing. It's out of my control, but I personally want to apologize to anyone out there who, went and upgraded, maybe even their old 300 by 300 artwork and went out and had a professionally produced 1200 by 1200. I guess maybe at this point, the best thing to do is go ahead and just, the next round, go ahead and get a 6000 by 6000, artwork and size it down.
Right.
But anyway, so the new spec is 1400 by 1400, but is PowerPress really rejecting 1200 by 1200 artwork?
It's not supposed to. It's supposed to save what you upload, but print a warning at the top.
So it might appear as though it's been rejected, like an error message.
Right. It does look like an error message because we put a yellow border around it and a big yellow neon background so it stands out.
Is there any way that you could potentially see going in and changing the wording to say that it's suggested and that this is not an error?
Yeah. And I've been thinking about that since you brought it up.
Yeah.
So that we'll try. The problem is it's kind of like feed validator. We always get people saying that this namespace is unknown error, and I'm like, those aren't errors. That's just a notice that feed validator doesn't know what the namespace is yet. So it's the same thing like that. I can make it as bulletproof as we can, and we'll still get people that think it's an error.
Right. Yeah. Well, no. So 1400 by 1400, and if you haven't listened to Podcast Answer Man episode number 256, even though just replace anywhere I say 1200 with 1400, and you'll be fine. And I don't want to reiterate everything here, but the biggest thing that I'll just say is that this is a suggestion. It is not a requirement. You can, if you still had 300 by 300 artwork for your podcast, you can still submit to the store. They're not going to take you out. There's nothing that you have to worry about there. It literally says that the only requirement that comes in, if you are featured as a featured podcast in iTunes, that you will not be accepted, or even you won't even be up for the running of being featured unless you have 1400 by 1400 artwork. Now, real quick, Angelo, in the categories where it says hot podcast, that's not featured. That's still just the listing. Is that right?
No, from what I understand is if they're going to show your podcast in the first and second level navigation, it needs to be have the right artwork per platform. Am I saying that right? So like when they do launch the TV, you better have the 1400 by 1400 if you want to be showing up in the initial results. Right.
Okay. Well, so get updated to 1400 by 1400, everybody.
Yeah, and one other suggestion too would be to save it as a JPEG. The PNG at that resolution is going to be close to a meg in size, depending on how much artwork is in the file.
Right.
And a JPEG will still be around 150 to 200K.
Yeah. Is there anything else that's new in PowerPress that you wanted to tell people about?
Well, yeah. A couple of the other iTunes specs is closed caption. So if you're creating video and you're going through the trouble to put or audio for that matter, in M4A format, and you're going through the trouble to put all the captioning, which if you're not familiar with what captioning is, it's essentially an option to display text at the same time that the person is speaking or the audio is playing in the video. You can then tell iTunes that, yeah, my media is closed caption. We don't know what the ramifications are yet for that. It's not a requirement. But, if you're trying to create content that appeals to the visually impaired or to the accessible crowd, that is something to seriously take into consideration.
Right.
One other quick thing is the Video.js player being an option in PowerPress now as well. If you've ever seen Video.js, it's a completely CSS-styled video player. And if you're doing video, you can literally put your own CSS in your own theme and just tell PowerPress what the class name is of the CSS in your theme, and it'll style it exactly how you want.
Sweet. And I know that all those web developers out there know exactly what you just said.
Right. Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty darn cool, actually.
Well, I'll tell you what. How long ago did PowerPress get its start? When was it first released?
I believe in summer of 2007 or late summer. Actually, if you give me a second, I'll give you the exact date because we keep pretty detailed README. Oh, I'm off a whole year. Released in August of 2008. And the first version was essentially, it did exactly what those two plugins that you used did. Essentially just handled the enclosure and gave you a nice audio player.
Nice. Blog World. I'm looking up because one of the things that I think that I saw is that you have the ability to go in, because occasionally I will do a Podcast Answer Man episode as a video podcast. It's very rare that I would do it, but occasionally I have. And I'm trying to think if it's proven income strategies. Let me see if I can pull it up, because I thought that I saw a video. Actually, no, that one's one where I did the audio as the thing. But you have the ability. One of the things that I love about the Blueberry PowerPress plugin is that you guys have the ability, if let's just say I do have a video episode and it's like I did it as an MP4 file, for example, and I put that into my feed. That's in my enclosure. Right. By default, if I have a player set up, by default, you'll throw in the PowerPress player or whatever player that you're using there, and it will display the enclosed media file on my blog post or my show notes. Whereas what I prefer to do is I prefer uploading my video file also to YouTube and then embedding the YouTube video into my post instead of the enclosed player that you guys have. Right. So you have the ability to go in and turn off per episode even that player. And that's something that I really, really enjoy. And I thought that I saw a post where I had a video episode where it did actually was reverting back to showing both players again. But I think it may be, I may have come across an old post where I forgot to go in and turn that one off. So it may be a non-issue. But you didn't change anything there, right?
No, that functionality dates back to somewhere in 2.0.
Yeah.
And that was one where Todd Cochran with the Geek News Central, he was doing live streaming when he records a show.
Yep.
And then when he's done, he takes the embed out and then puts another embedder where it's permanently saved. So I don't know if he's doing that now. I think he's got a whole nother system he's using now for when he does live. But so he wanted to be able to put an embed in there and it not display the player because he wants people to watch it live when it's live.
Exactly.
So
very cool. Well, PowerPress 4.0, it is now available for those who have not upgraded. And if people want to go and find the video podcast that is available for tips and tricks about the PowerPress plugin itself, they can go to powerpresspodcast.com. And then if they need any support out there, my understanding is they could go to forum.blueberry.com. And of course, blueberries without any E's. And if they go there will be a section for the PowerPress plugin support. And I know that you guys are very helpful in that area. The community's just been very helpful to a lot of people that have needed some help along the way.
Right.
Angelo, on behalf, is there anything else?
Oh, yeah. One real quick, too, is if you're currently using PodPress and you're worried about making the switch, don't worry, because when we built ours to replace PodPress, all it takes is installing and enabling PowerPress and then disabling PodPress, and then it'll pick up where PodPress left off.
Okay, say that one more time. So, so it's going to actually it's going to pick up where PodPress left off. Will it go and pull that information out and turn it into like the official WordPress style stuff?
Well, no. It just gets people going. So essentially, PodPress does store episode data differently than what WordPress would want it to be stored. So PowerPress does store it correctly, according to what WordPress wants enclosures to be stored. But if you just want to check it out or just want to switch without putting too much effort, you can still do that. And PowerPress imports all the PodPress settings, and it'll render and display both in the feed and on your site all the old PodPress episode data.
Okay.
Then if you say, all right, I love PowerPress, then you can go and use some tools and import your PodPress episodes into WordPress.
Now, you say use some tools. Is that tools that you have or other tools?
Yeah, there's tools built into PowerPress. We could probably have a month of episodes just talking about different parts of PowerPress.
Well, that's why I'm excited. I mean, you guys should cover all that stuff in your PowerPress podcast site. I think that would be excellent because there are a lot of people out there who would love to do that. So you're saying there you do have some tools built into PowerPress that will allow them to do that import if they find that they do like it, so they can actually finally dump PodPress out the window and disable it and delete it.
Right. But, we designed it so it's fast out of the gate to switch. And if you want to switch back, you can switch back, and then it was like nothing happened.
Nice. Very cool. Well, that's what I love about you guys is that you're not trying to be proprietary. You're not trying to keep everybody on the system. You're out there serving the podcasting community so that the podcasters can consistently get their stuff delivered, even when WordPress is updating like crazy and making changes to the back end, and iTunes is changing their specs, 1 week after, just a couple weeks after changing their specs to 1200. I love that you guys are on top of things and really appreciate it. And I am a huge supporter of PowerPress. All of my podcasts today use PowerPress. Still, I only use it for the enclosure, and I only use it for the audio player. But it works flawlessly. It's never failed me ever since I switched over to it, probably about 3 years ago now. So, Angelo, you guys have done a wonderful job, and I really appreciate it. Now, do you have anything that you want to plug where people can find you on the web or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I have my own personal blog. It's angelo.mandato.com.
Excellent.
And besides that, just, blueberry.com. Check if you have a podcast, make sure you're on there, and we'll try to put you on as much glass as possible with our Android and TV apps on Samsung and such.
Very cool. Well, Angelo, I really appreciate you taking the time today, and I'm sure we'll run into each other again. Are you coming to Blog World?
I'm not going to be able to make it. I have a lot of family stuff going on in June.
All right. Well, maybe in Vegas.
But Todd will be there.
I know Todd will be there. I'm looking forward to it. Angelo, again, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, my friends, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of the Podcast Answer Man. Once again, thank you to Angelo Mandato for sharing such wonderful behind-the-scenes looks at what's going on inside of the world of the PowerPress plugin. Hey, real quick, I want to give you an update. As I'm recording this on Thursday, May 24th, 2012, Blog World and New Media Expo is only 12 days away. I cannot imagine just how awesome this thing is. Well, I can. I'm looking forward to it. I know it is going to be awesome, and I hope to see you there. In fact, I want to let you know Callie Lewis is actually coming, and she is actually going to be broadcasting live from Blog World and New Media Expo on June 6th and 7th. That's Wednesday and Thursday. You can find that live broadcast at geekbeat.tv/live, and I'm going to be talking with Callie on Thursday, June 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyway, she'll be broadcasting live from Blog World Expo. There's going to be so much awesome stuff. Hey, if you haven't signed up, there's still time. You can go to blogworldexpo.com. I do want to remind you, you can get the virtual ticket option, whether you're coming to Blog World or you're not able to make it to Blog World. The virtual ticket gets you access to every single session, everything that is taught at Blog World, not just the amazing 24 sessions of the podcasting track, but all of Blog World. Go check it out, the virtual ticket option. Use promo code GSPN10. When you sign out, you get, or when you check out, when you register, whatever, you get 10% off. GSPN 10 when you sign up. Now, here's the thing. If you want to get me a commission on this, if you want to, use the link at podcastanswerman.com where it says I'm speaking at Blog World. If you click that link, that's my affiliate link. The GSPN 10 is for you. Clicking through the link, that one's for me. Anyway, I want to say thank you to those of you who have left iTunes reviews for the Podcast Answer Man. Of course, that helps me rise up in the ratings and the rankings, and it also lets people know what you think about the show. Special thank you to Eric James Wolf and AJ Owen, who have left reviews in the past week. And just notice that I leave out all my good Canadian friends. Kenny Hard, Albert Hathazi, Marshall Stevenson, John Wiggins, Bill Hutchinson, Lee Andrew from Germany, all of these guys in other countries leaving reviews for Podcast Answer Man. Just want to say thank you to you guys. We're now in the U.S. store up to 69 5-star iTunes ratings. Love to get to 100. If you want to help me out, go over to podcastanswerman.com and click on the image in the show notes where it says rate and review on iTunes. You'll see it at podcastanswerman.com/262. And then again, real quick, I want to say thank you to those of you who have signed up using my affiliate code with Bluehost, mynextnewplace.com, and anchordad.com. Thank you. I get a great commission from that. God bless you all. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything, including maybe the next couple extra minutes of your podcast, to the next level.